Welcome to the Haven for Soul Care, the podcast where we explore the art of nurturing the mind, body, and spirit. Each week, we bring you inspiring stories, insightful conversations, and practical tips to help you create a life of balance, peace, and purpose. Whether you're seeking guidance on personal growth, wellness, or simply need a moment to reconnect, this is your safe space. I'm your host, Brianna, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in and take care of the soul. So, welcome to the Haven for Soul Care podcast. I'm your host, Brianna, and we have a special guest with us on today. Colette Chandler is with us, and I'm excited to have her. We're going to go ahead and jump into the conversation. So, I want you to introduce yourself to our audience. Thank you for first for joining us and being our guest, but
No,
we want to hear about you. So, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you.
oh, yep, absolutely. And it's Colette Chandler. Yep. Um, and so happy to be here. And a little bit about me is I'm a nationally board certified functional medicine health coach, which basically means I look at everything from a root cause lens to help people feel better.
Hmm.
That's better habits, hormones. I specialize in women over the age of 40, helping them develop better habits, better hormones, better gut health, and then recover from things like mold toxicity, autoimmune conditions, things like that. I got started in this profession because of my own health issues that just weren't resolving, and then things going on with my family. But now I see people all over the world to work with
Oh,
them.
so I want you because when I read your bio, I was thinking about myself because now I'm over 40, right? And um, I am experiencing, I guess I'm in the perimenopause stage,
Mhm.
and when the gut health and all of that, I'm like, seems to be an issue with me now. So I want you to talk a little more about that and what that looks like for women.
Yeah. So those are what you're saying is exactly what I hear when people come. It's like, okay, I'm either in perimenopause or menopause, and then I notice gut health. And part of that, if I could down this path first, the gut health issues develop more as we get older because we don't produce the enzymes that we once did in our mouth. So we're not able to digest as well as we did. And I almost feel like we need a lot more guidance. And that's why we need, like with what I do, because it's like we're handed a brand new body and we're like, okay, now you get to learn how to take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now you get to learn how to feed it, how to move it, how to eat for it, and everything changes. So it's a whole new way of like looking at our body. And you start noticing things like, okay, I'm bloated or I'm not digesting as well. And it's just a change in thinking to say, like, I always tell people get curious versus frustrated. That's what I help my clients do. Because you walk in with frustration, like, oh, why am I feeling like this? Well, this used to work. Well, I used to do this and this doesn't work anymore. And why? And it feels like overwhelming, like, why is all these things happening? And it's not happening all at once. It's just feels that way because our hormones start shifting. We start shifting around, the age of 40. And sometimes people have hormone imbalance earlier. A lot of the clients I'll work with, I'll see things that they started in their 30s and then it got worse later. And if our gut health is off, then I notice people develop more symptoms than if our gut health wasn't off. And that's because we're methylating, we're digesting through um, our gut, and so everything goes through the liver, and that's how we get everything moving and out of our system. And the way that we detox our estrogen, which is one of our main, hormones, is through
Mm-hmm.
the liver. So we need that to be functioning and our gut health to be working, or we start noticing symptoms where we'll notice like we're not sleeping as well, or our energy starts getting diminished, or we're bloated after we eat, just sluggish. I forgot, like, oh, did I take that pill? Did I not? Oh, I went down the stairs and what was I going to do? This forgetfulness.
Oh,
And we've
yes.
normalized it, but it doesn't have to be normal.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Okay. So you what does so we understand that chemical part. So, but what does it have to do with? Because you said when you started going down this journey yourself, you mentioned family, some things with family. So, what does
Hmm.
our external has to do have to do? How does that connect with our internal?
Our family environment and dynamics and things like that. Well, there's a lot of ways. I mean, it can be adding extra stress, and stress is a huge component for hormones. So when people take a Dutch test, which is like the gold standard of the hormone test, and I'm trained as a midlife hormone mastery coach too, so I went back for additional training. So I can look at Dutch tests to help people and educate them on those. And when someone will share, like they've been to their doctor, they've gone over the Dutch test, and then they bring it to me to just kind of educate them about it. You can tell if somebody was in a like a near miss, not a car accident, but like where they were just, or something bad news on your Dutch test, your cortisol will shoot up like way out of range. So we know our hormones are really impacted by stress. And so in that particular situation, I always told people, like, if you're going to take it, I'll educate them on how to take it. Because a lot of people just get handed these things, but they don't get told on how to take it, what to eat before the test,
Mm,
all the things to keep in mind. So I give people like a 3-page document and what to do before, to get better results. In those particular situations, you almost can't even look at the results because your hormones are so out of whack because of the stress.
mm,
Um, but stress, so your external environment will impact the way you digest food. If you're under stress, you don't digest your food well. You're not going to sleep as well. There's so many things that impact that environment. Now, for me, why that played such a huge part and why I went into the mold toxicity arena was because my hormones got disrupted from
mm.
mold exposure. And I was already a cancer survivor, so my gut health was already a little bit off because of going through cancer treatment as a kid. And it wasn't until I connected my own dots, which is a functional medicine timeline, which I do with clients, that I was able to have that aha moment to be like, oh, that's why things got thrown off early. I went into menopause early. I shouldn't have, but mold actually put me in there earlier
Oh, wow.
because of my genetics and my response to an environment that I didn't know I had mold in my home. And we don't know much, a lot of people don't know about mold, but oftentimes that can be the one thing that threw the hormones off in the first place, or through another health situation, a gut health issue compounded. So then it might have not, you might have gone through, you're going to go through perimenopause and menopause anyways, but that could be why your symptoms are worse,
Oh,
is because of that. So your nervous system also gets disrupted from hormones, but it also gets disrupted from mold kind of wreaks havoc, especially if you're genetically predisposed to not being able to detox well from mold, which is like 25% of the population. Then you're disrupted, your body's disrupted more, so you might feel like you just can't catch your breath. You're just stressed out and you don't know why, no matter people are telling you or doctors are telling you. And I had a client coming to me like, everyone tells me my nervous system is a mess. I know that, but I don't know what to do about it. So we worked a ton on her nervous system. She was in mold and
mm,
just couldn't, she was really healthy. So it just disrupted everything. Her hormones were out of whack. So we had to kind of peel back that onion and kind of address things. And a lot of times the first thing is the nervous system.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's really how your outside environment can really impact whatever environment you're in is going to dictate kind of how your body functions, I guess.
So let me ask you a question because you made a comment. You said you are a childhood cancer survivor, right? So
Hmm.
my daughter is also, so she was diagnosed at 5. Now she's 21 now. And when you said that, it made me think because she said that she doesn't go to she was like, Mom, I don't go to the bathroom regular. And I thought, maybe you need to start drinking more water. But I never put what she went through as a child, I never correlated the two.
Hmm.
So, so can you go into a little more detail about
Sure.
that?
Sure. Did she go through, so her being a cancer survivor, did she go through chemo and radiation?
Yes.
Okay. So it's the same as me. So what can happen is that's going to disrupt the gut balance. That's going to disrupt the gut health. And a lot of times you might be more sensitive. your whole gut, your process, everything is going to be more sensitive and may not, and you're going to probably have to rebuild that gut health over time and get it stronger. And there's a couple tests called like GI map, GI effects, that can look at do like a stool test. And I don't run those, but I work with a lot of doctors who do. I have people go through, like with what I do so many times, you don't need as many tests later. I always say, come to me first, because there's so much we can clear up ahead of time before you go in and see a doctor. Just with addressing things from an immune, from a gut health standpoint, from habits, from lifestyle, eating, supplement. I mean, there's so many things we can address first. So with her gut health, she wants to kind of get an idea of like, if she's not going to the bathroom, then she's not detoxing. And the bigger problem there, we say, like, people think, oh, it's not as big of a concern, but where that addresses a concern is if she's not going to the bathroom well, that means she's not digesting well. That means she's not absorbing her nutrients well. That also means all the toxins that she's getting exposed to, she can't get out of her body.
Which will explain why she gets the boils. So she gets boils, but she also and we've gone to the chronologist, and I'm like, this medicine that they're giving you, it's not helping. You're still getting this stuff. And so this is making a lot of sense. So those who are listening right now that are dealing with cancer or have been through chemo and radiation, and you're dealing with these issues, they really need to come to someone like you first so they can have a better explanation of perhaps maybe what's going on with them, because a lot of these tests really aren't saying
Well,
much.
and that's a really good point. Is her body is showing symptoms of an underlying problem, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times the last way out is through the skin, or what's going on underneath it will show up in the skin. And because the skin is an organ too, and the fastest way we absorb is through the skin. So anything we put on our bodies is absorbed. And if your body is already having trouble detoxing, and then we have so many toxins in our environment, it's not like we can live in a bubble, right? We have to go outside, we have to, but the biggest thing is to teach our bodies, okay, I usually have like when when you're drinking a glass of water, if we keep filling that water and then we pour more water in, what's going to happen is it's going to run over the side. It's the same way with your body. You can start getting those symptoms. We got to empty that water. So we got to drink part of it, get it down to the bottom. And then if we're exposed to something, our bodies can do what they're designed to do, right? Detox out anything that they're exposed to.
Mm-hmm.
But if we are constantly filling that cup and then our bodies can't detox, we can't go to the bathroom, we're not sweating enough, we're not urinating, those kinds of things, then our bodies really can't get everything out of it. And that's when it becomes bigger problems. And you see, those situations occur where we have outside things that just don't go away. My
Mm-hmm.
daughter had a case of cystic acne, which underlying was actually her gut health, which had been disrupted by mold. But it took me probably a good 6 months to get that. And it wasn't a pill. It wasn't just a pill. It was addressing what was going on with her gut. It was getting kind of underneath it. We changed her diet. We started detoxing her a little bit more with just some lifestyle habits and drinking more. And over time, we added in some supplements. And over time, her body just it started healing, and you could see it in her skin. So it was a
Mm-hmm.
reflection of and she felt better too. So it
Yeah.
was a reflection of what's going on.
So when you talk about habits, talk to us more about when you say sometimes it's habits. What are habits that most people need to change or incorporate?
So that's a great question. So habits are so individualized, right? It depends on my habit's going to be different than yours, depending on my why, which is what I help people develop. Like, what's your big why? Why are you doing this? Why do you want to come see me? Why do you want to work on your health? And we kind of work around SMART goals, which is specific, measurable, obtainable, realistic, timely. Um, and all of those go into play when you're creating these habits. So I do and I do a workshop which is coming up annually this Well Life Vision Workshop. We do a
Okay.
vision board. And on here, it's not just about a New Year's resolution or a habit I want to create. It's about what do I want to see? What transformation do I want to see? So those habits are going to go closer to what do I want to accomplish? So, for example, I had a client that came to me and she was in pain. And she said, I want to be able to pick up my granddaughter. That was her goal. And so we created habits. She created habits and tiny little micro goals around this bigger goal. Well, we got her to her goal. She worked with me on multiple habits over 18 months
Mm-hmm.
and just talks about it, transformed her life. And I have a testimonial from her on my website because she kept working towards bigger and bigger goals. But her initial goal to get her out of pain was actually quite complex because she was in pain. It had related to hormones. It had to do with her not sleeping well. It had to do with higher stress. So she had to build in some habits of movement. So the right movement, the right stretching, the right mindset, changing her eating. So over time, there were multiple things she had to address towards this one goal.
Mm-hmm.
So those habits can get developed really well if you have a bigger why and understand that. The other thing is when you're developing those habits, sometimes people, I would say, run after too many rabbits. So if you're running after 12 rabbits, you're going to be lucky to catch one.
Mm-hmm.
If you do too many goals at the same time, and habits too, it's going to be very difficult. So like 1 to 2 over 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, because we're told habits take 30 days. No, they take a lot longer than that to develop. And that's why people are frustrated because there's
Mm-hmm.
so much on Google and so much information. And that's one of my areas of expertise is behavior change,
Mm-hmm.
understanding the discrepancies between what we say and what we do, and then getting them towards a bigger wellness goal that they want to accomplish. And so these habits, if you're focused on 1 to 2 that are super important for you that hit a bigger goal, then you want to make these habits written down and check them off and are they daily? Are they weekly? And just get into the habit and then come up with your reward ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I do this versus when I accomplish this, and I've done this habit straight for 3 weeks, this is the reward I'm going to give myself. So you have
Okay.
something to look forward to.
Mm-hmm. When you talk about behavior change, can you go in a little more in detail with that? Because I think a lot of times people don't understand that. I was speaking with someone not too long ago, and I said, we go into the new year, and I said, people say, oh, this year is going to be this year is going to be that. But I'm like, if you don't change your behavior, it's going to be the same year it was last year.
Exactly. Exactly. If we do nothing, nothing changes. So behavior change is tough. A lot of people will be like, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to change my own behavior, which is understandable. Change is hard, right? But if people are 1% ready, I tell them, come to me anyways. Like we can get you to each level, and I only use positive psychology. Like you're never going to feel bad. Like you always feel better after the calls than you do when you come on.
Mm-hmm.
You're always going to feel better. And we focus on wins. But behavior change really has to do with the way you talk to yourself. I mean, it really first starts with mindset and the way we speak to ourselves. If we're
Mm-hmm.
constantly beating ourselves up for making mistakes, which is going to happen, then we're not going to move forward the way we want to. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking back to a client who came to me for multiple things. She came to me originally for emotional eating. And she also had gut health, and then she also wanted hormones, which we're working on first. She
Mm-hmm.
also wanted to lose weight, but she knew she had to deal with emotional eating first. So we dealt with that. And when she came to me, she said, I've never been successful at this. I have never been disciplined, and I don't know if I can do this and stick to a goal. So we talked about it. She decided to do it. And what she told me recently was, this is the first time I've stuck to something. This is the first time I've been able to change my own behavior. And her emotional eating came back to something in childhood. Now, I'm not a psychologist, but I still use positive psychology moving forward. She had addressed this with a psychologist, but it still wasn't enough to change her own behavior. She
Mm-hmm.
needed a lot more support and to understand her body better. So I developed a course called Your Hormonal Blueprint to Better Health and Vitality, where she got into the course and the coaching. So she could kind of binge watch these bite-sized modules on different aspects of her body and understanding it. And she said, the more I understand my body and how everything goes together, the more I'm getting it. And like, I'm excited now. And now she told me she had changed to a new eating plan. Not only was the weight dropping off, she's no longer emotional eating when she's stressed out.
Mm-hmm.
And even in that moment, those times where it would have happened and she had really big situations, she developed new habits, which we worked on, new habits to replace the old habits, right? We
Mm-hmm.
immediately think with behavior change, well, I'm just going to change my own behavior. But it doesn't work that way, because if it were so easy, then we would have done it on our own. That's why I always
Mm-hmm.
believe we need a coach. But there's these big ones that are underlying that they just keep resurfacing. And we're like, why are these here? Well, we sometimes have to replace it, either changing our environment, anchoring it to an existing habit, or just replacing it in general. I had someone that there was a certain time of day that she drank, I think it was soda or something, and she's like, I don't want to be drinking soda. So we had to find something to replace that. Like, I still want to have that ritual of drinking. Like, my job is to figure out what is it that they like of this habit? Why is it here to stay? What is keeping it grounded? And
Mm-hmm.
then figure out, is it the ritual? Well, then we'll replace it with another beverage. Or is it just that I'm bored? And so we replace it with something else. So getting to the bottom of why. Why
Mm-hmm.
is that habit continuing? And what can I replace it with, so that that bad habit's replaced with a new good habit? Sometimes it's as simple as changing the environment. So I know people, like, they would have, like, for her, she would eat at 3 to 4 o'clock. We figured that out, stress eat. Like, okay, what's going on at 3 to 4 o'clock? When my kids come home and I just feel really stressed. Why are you feeling stressed? So we got to the bottom of the stress. And then we replaced it with something new. She got out of the environment where she would eat. So she would go then to her desk, and she loved art, but she had forgotten about getting into flow where she's doing art. So she went out and got a coloring book or something, and she had it right there.
Oh, wow.
And she just started coloring. The other habit that she often would do in the beginning would walk. Like, I'm going to get at that time, I'm going to get out, I'm going to walk. So she had to change her environment to get that habit to really start sticking. And then it got to the point where eating is no longer automatic. And she said to me, I had family come, and I would have normally been so stressed, but because I had all these solid habits in place, I fell back slightly, but I was able to get back on board, which is a win. Some people consider that not a win, but it's a win, because she, first of all, connected the dots. And secondly, she was able to change her own behavior. And she said, I realized I do not like how I feel eating the old way, and I have no interest in going back there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge mindset shift. And I told her, do you realize where you were and how far you've come? Because that mindset shift is going to keep her solid in those
Yeah.
habits.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. So, um, I love it because when you can get to the root cause of things, I believe that's where you're gonna find your lasting change anyway. Because
Right.
if you keep plucking the flowers, the root is still there and that flower's gonna come back. So for one who wanted to come in to work with you, how would they go about doing that?
So normally what people do, they come in a lot of different ways. They might come in where they might hear me, like on a podcast like this. And the best way is to reach out. You can reach out via my website, Be Well with Colette. You can
Mm-hmm.
also find me on Instagram, because I do a lot of live reels on there, and there's a link in there. They can come in through a workshop I do, like a vision board planning, which is this one is like nothing you've seen. Like, I do specific exercises to have you dig deeper, to
Okay.
really come up with a vision board that's sticky, and then teach you habits that are going to make it stick, to make it come true. Because I believe these vision boards can come true, because I've seen
Mm-hmm.
it happen with mine. So that's one way in. Another way in is through my course, and they can go directly to my website, or reach out to me, and they can get into my course, which really is a great resource in teaching them and educating them with tools and resources, how to deal with gut health and hormones and all of that. And then there's some like coaching in there and group coaching, so they can work that way. Or
Mm-hmm.
they can just contact me and say, I'm not really sure what's perfect for me, but I
Mm-hmm.
just want to talk to you and get an idea. And they can book a 30-minute health recovery call that's free.
Okay. Now, I'm interested to hear more about your vision board. When do you normally when is this one coming up?
Yeah,
And
this, yep, go ahead. Sorry.
no, go ahead.
Okay. 2025, depending on when people are listening to this. So the 2025 one is January 11th and January 8th and January 11th. They're different times. They're on my website. It's like from 7 to 8:30. I think on the 8th, and then the other one's in the afternoon. So I offer two different options, and they're going to be in the company of other women. You can bring men in too. But I tell people, like, grab a friend to do it with. It'd be so much fun. Grab a partner. Bring your, like, I tell you what materials to bring with you, and you're going to come out like, oh my gosh, just you're going to just feel excited
yeah,
because this is a vision board you've never created before, or even if you've done one, or if you haven't done one, I mean, you're in for a huge surprise because they work. As I said, mine, I have it, like, I took a picture of it.
yeah,
And this is from 2 years ago. And it's funny because now I look at my vision board and I'm like, oh, this is so easy now. But at the time I put it on here, it was like a year of no sugar. That was a
mm-hmm.
pretty big challenge for me.
Yeah, yeah. Year of no sugar. Well, I need to go ahead and put that on mine. Um, so I know that the listeners, a lot of them like vision boards, and so I want to encourage them to go ahead and sign up because we still have time to sign up, correct?
Yes, there's plenty of time. Um, yeah, there's plenty of time to sign up until until the workshops, the 8th. They can sign all the way up till the day of.
Okay, yeah. I'm gonna check it out myself. So ladies, let's try to sign up because if it's one that we've never done before, let's try to do something that is going to actually work and something that we can actually get to the end goal and we don't have to say at the end of the year we didn't work on anything. So I'm excited about it because I like the way that you incorporate the behavior change. I think that is so important. And I think um I've talked to other coaches, and the behavior change really hasn't been a big component in the way that they coach.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's been more on this let's do this, let's do that. But I'm like, but at the core, if they don't change this, they're gonna go right back without you. And
Yes.
surely they don't want to have keep a coach for the rest of their life. How can they
No.
continue to be and how can they get to the place of being independent with, um, but of course it's the behavior. You have to change your behavior and your mindset. I like that you said that too, because stinking thinking will always have you living well below where you should be living because the way you think about yourself is really how you treat yourself.
Oh gosh, that's so true. I love that. How you think is how the way you treat yourself. It is so true, right? Like people beat themselves up so quickly over things that are normal. Like I tell people, the way you're going to heal, and the same thing when you set goals and habits, you're going to go backwards, forwards, sideways. There's nothing linear about it. And you're going to make mistakes and fall, just like you rode a bike, just like you learned how to walk. You're going to skin your knee, you're going to have to brush off and pick
Hmm.
yourself up and be okay with reframing the idea of a failure.
Hmm.
That means you tried pretty hard. If you're failing, if you're falling down, and it's tough. I mean, I think about like when we dealt with mold in our house, and I think about what mentally I had to do to shift, I had to throw things out. And I remember I did a whole video on it because I had to come up with a song. I mean, I remember I was crying, but I had to do it. And so I came up with a funny song and just kept throwing things out, and I was like, if in doubt, throw it out, and just kept, and then I kept reframing, and people would say, how are you doing this? I'm saying, but I don't have a choice. Like, for my family, I have to reframe this. I have to look at
Hmm.
it in a different way. I have to let go of the old and allow
Hmm.
in new so that my body, their bodies, plus we have to shift and focus on our happiness at this point and what we
Hmm.
can control
Hmm.
versus what we can't.
Yeah, I think that's really good because um earlier in this year, me personally, I know that the Lord was dealing with me with letting go of stuff. And one thing that I hate to get rid of and is clothing. I hate to get rid of my clothes. and my shoes. And so I can remember I would go through my closet and I was like, oh gosh, I'm running out of space. And it was like, get rid of it. You can't get nothing new if you don't get rid of the old,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And it went back into the way I was thinking about old things or um past hurts and things that had been done to me, and I was holding on to those things.
Mm,
And
yes.
I couldn't receive what was trying to come to me because I was too full of this old stuff.
Yeah. That makes sense though. And if I could interject there is I have a process called light, and that starts with
Mm-hmm.
letting go of either things or a mindset, and then igniting from within, which is really deciding, and that focuses on your why of what's going to make me happy, what's going to make me joyful, what's going to make me want to do these things, what's going to ignite me. Gaining a better understanding where you are and where you want to be. So many times it's hard to get where we want because we really don't know what we want. Right. And do we really want it, or is it what somebody else wants? So where am I right now? And that's why I
Mm-hmm.
help people close that gap of where am I with my health and wellness, my mindset, and everything in my life. I mean, because our health really, if our health is good, our life is going to be good. I mean, let's be honest. And then from there, then that goes on to focusing on happiness is how can we bring more joy and happiness? I heard something
Mm-hmm.
the other day of a lady putting a joy, I do a gratitude journal, but I love that this was a joyful journal, and it would focus on what three joyful moments did we have throughout the day. And so she's recording them. And I thought that's great on that happiness that H I had. And then T is trusting the process so we transform. So
Mm-hmm.
often we go along the way, and even if we're working with a coach, but we don't trust it, then we don't trust ourselves to do it. And then we start again beating ourselves up with a negative self talk. We don't trust the process to say, okay, I fell back, but this is the process. I may have to take steps backwards. I am going to fall, and that's part of the process for me to
Mm-hmm.
heal and learn, and then to pick myself back up and move forward and go forward. I
Mm-hmm.
see that also with when I work with people with hormones, is hormones, your mindset shifts often because your hormones are off. So your progesterone is one of the hormones that keeps you calm. When your progesterone is low, you're not going to be calm.
Mm-hmm.
And taking a pill or taking, I mean, that is a great band-aid, but it's still not going to give you that end goal. So often people have to trust that, okay, if I start this process, my hormones are not going to adjust in a month. That is
Mm-hmm.
very unusual. Probably 3 months, and it might be 6 months.
Oh.
And and coming to somebody like me that I can educate you and tell you what supplements are going to keep them optimized, how you can eat better for your hormones, like the higher protein, what kind of movement is better for your body. And I put all that into my course too. Um, and helping them understand, like, trust this process. You may not feel great. You're going to feel better and better and better, but changing that mindset to say, I trust this, that I will continue to feel better and improve, and really and knowing that my
Mm-hmm.
hormones will go back on track. Perimenopause is more like a this, but we can definitely balance the lows with the ups. I mean, we can definitely
Mm-hmm.
make you feel better so that you're not feeling like out of whack.
Yeah. So I first started thinking about my personal hormones when my I was having some things going on within my body. My doctor get prescribed me birth control pills, and not even putting the two together, I noticed that I was crying a lot. um I was angry, depressed, and I thought it was external situations, but I knew, I
Mhm.
said, but I'm reacting to this stuff um way more extreme than I would ever in my life. And what made me stop, and this is probably going to sound vain, but what made me stop is that it started to give me hyperpigmentation. So I got this little thing from the birth control, and I
Yeah.
said, wait a minute. And I went into the doctor and I told her, I said, Something's not right." She was telling me, well, it's the birth control. When I stopped taking those, it was 3 months later when everything began to even back out for me. At that and the weight started coming back off.
Hmm.
Um And so we went with, because I want, and I'm saying this because I want you to touch on it for us. And then I got on an IUD, and I got on an IUD. I went in, I weighed 155. Within a month, I was at 165. And I tried to tell the doctor, hey, this might not be for me because what we got it for is not helping. I said, but I've gained a massive amount of weight, and you could see it in my face. And he told me that there's no study to support what I said. And I said, well, there is a study. I said, there is a study that says that women aren't ever heard when we go in with our complaints.
That's a very valid point.
And he said, well, I said, but I knew. And so it gave me acne.
Mm,
I had the weight gain, and it began to make my hair thin
mm,
out. And I had never, and I said, oh my gosh. And my hormones again they was just out of whack. I had extreme lows, like just low energy. Didn't really want to do too much. And I'm saying that, and I want to say one more thing, because all of this for me, it's just kind of making more sense. So when I would get pregnant with my children, you know how you have postpartum. Well, when
hmm
I would get pregnant, I had the symptoms of postpartum.
Oh, wow. Oh, that was hard. I can imagine.
It was very hard, and I never knew until after I went to school, and that we even have that women really went through that and go through that, and that there are counselors out there that can help you work your way through. So anyway, I'm just naming all of that to get to just see what you worked with women like that,
Mhm.
and if so, what is your advice?
So what I find, what I can share is that a couple things is when you got the IUD and you got the pill. Dr. Jolene Brayton talks a lot about this, about the pill and what the pill does for the body. So it's a good one to watch. But you figured it out, right? You connected the dots, and as you said, you weren't listened to, which is I see and hear women, and that's why I started down the road of hormones, because I was not seen or heard either. And I literally felt I had high anxiety and had never experienced anxiety. I felt like things were closed. Like I started feeling weird. Like, what is wrong with me?
Mm-hmm.
And you're not heard or seen, and then you feel like you might be a little crazy because, like, am I the only one feeling like this? Which is why I went down this path. But I hear what you're saying is you started noticing these symptoms, and your hair falling out and the acne are all called androgen issues. And so that means it was going down an opposite pathway. So when it goes down the other pathway, so there's an AB pathway that's towards the testosterone, that's when you start seeing hair falling out, acne, and things like that. Now, to look on a Dutch test, um, it may or may not show it's going down that pathway. But the biggest thing is also to pay attention to symptoms, right? To say, well, my hair is falling out. Hair can also fall out from mold. So it just depends on what's going on, right? But listening to someone saying, whoa, my hair is falling out. I have acne. I'm gaining weight. I'm just not feeling myself. I'm crying all the time. Well, yeah, because you've just changed the ratio. It's like you're doing the tango and your dog is leading. I mean, it's just a crazy
Mm-hmm.
in the hormones, it's like if the wrong one leads, well, then you've just gotten the ratio off, and then you are feeling completely off. And what's even bigger, and people don't realize this, it's more just not just symptoms, is everyone needs to address their hormones because this directly impacts heart disease. And people don't realize this. Osteoporosis, um, bone fractures. I see all the time people in great shape and health, and they fracture their hip because it has to do with hormones. It has to do with the
Mm-hmm.
ratio with the estrogen and protection from breast cancer and other cancers and things like that. Your protection stops at 50. So if you start like in your 40s is a great time to address hormones, even if you don't have symptoms, because you are addressing health problems. In the future,
Mm-hmm.
you're preventing those health problems from happening because
Mm-hmm.
what we're doing in our 40s is going to show up later in our 60s and 70s, those health issues. So with yours, it went down the wrong, it was going down the wrong pathway. It was going down
Mm-hmm.
the B pathway. And that was producing more of your androgen issues, the hair falling out and all that. And then your progesterone, I would assume from what you're saying too, was probably pretty much off. And
Oh.
so it increased your estrogen is what I'm predicting, the progesterone. So the ratios were off. And as a result, you could tell your symptoms were off. Weight
Mm-hmm.
gain is so common. I see it in mold because mold loves to hide in fat, but it's also in hormones. And again, those can go hand in hand, but it's like an overnight thing and nobody believes it until you experience it. And it was, for me, it was also overnight, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me though, with mold, it's almost impossible to lose. And so that's how I also know, like, if somebody just, we try everything and it's just resistant, I have now found new strategies for women to drop even in those situations. But um, that weight gain can, when your hormones are off, you're going to feel it. You're going to see weight gain. You're going to see it more around the middle. And then the more you exercise, you might gain more because
Mm-hmm.
exercise can produce more stress in the body. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're over exercising, it also can hurt you. So there is like a fine balance. And when I work with women, I really teach them to be intuitive. I had a lady that I could share. She came again through the mold angle, but her hormones were so out of whack because of that. And she like loved lifting but she was so depleted. And I'm like, "How are you feeling?" She said, "I'm exhausted." I'm like, "Then maybe we need to take a break." And she'd just pause and be silent, like, "Okay, tell me why, like, you don't want to take a break." Well, I use that as for emotional, because like when I was dealing with so much stress, that's the way I deal with it, is to exercise it away
Mm-hmm.
versus dealing with the emotional piece. So she had to dig deeper to deal with that piece to say, okay, but it's not supporting my body and it's actually doing more harm because she'd be exhausted. So we got her energy back, even in the midst of mold, which is tough, and getting her feeling better until she could, she ended up moving out, not remediating. Um, but she was able to, she worked with a doctor to and able to have a baby because she was able to get her hormones back on track and get to the point where she felt so much better. But
Mm-hmm.
yes, it's just adjusting and really seeing where your body is so that you can get your body back into balance.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah, you just answered a question for me. I remember this was years ago and I was telling someone, I said, I've never in my life, I said, seen somebody who exercised and still gain weight. And that was me. And I couldn't figure out. I said, I have a trainer. And I said, I am gaining weight and it was
Yeah,
muscle. So yeah.
yeah.
Um, so if you're like me and you're listening to us on today, know that if you're gaining weight and you're exercising and eating right, there's a hormonal problem. And so we need to get us a coach. Because it's sad that we can go to the doctors and they're really not listening to us.
They're
They're not.
not, and you raise a really good point, if I can just interject, is that they're not listening because they're not trained. That's not the training. And most
Mhm.
doctors aren't trained in hormones. And that's why I got more educated. I don't want to replace the doctor, but I want to coach women through this and to
Mhm.
say, hey, you're not alone. And I understand this, and I can educate you to understand your body, to know what to do about it. So you're no longer frustrated, right? You're
Mhm.
super curious, and then you can get the results. So you can start feeling great. The one that came to me that dealt with her um, emotional eating, and now she's working on her hormones. If she had done the Dutch test earlier before we addressed everything else, it would have been completely different
Oh, wow.
because she waited and we addressed everything first. Her Dutch test would have produces better results. She no longer had cravings, and we hadn't even worked on hormones yet because we
Mm.
had worked on emotional eating, mindset, and gut health. She normally, no, her cravings were gone. She was exercising, she was working out, she's no longer stressed out, she wasn't emotional eating, she could walk past things. And it's amazing when I see that, where just people flip that around and their whole body is better. And you haven't even
Mhm.
really gotten to the hormone. I mean, it addressed the hormones, but not to a larger level.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I want to ask you this before we close out. The what is a detox for mold?
Mm. So detoxing for mold, it depends on where you are, but detoxing for mold is Basically, I start first with mindset because mindset's so important, but you have to address your environment first. Like, first of all, where did you get the mold exposure? Is it from your past, which I see that a lot, where somebody grew up in a moldy home and slowly over time, I call it like a mold poisoning, and or is it in your current environment? So we address that first. And I did a whole webinar that's on my website
Okay.
that I recorded that's on there and the mistakes I made along the way of
Okay.
doing this. So addressing the environment is super important first. And then, so you're going to detox your home is what's going on in my home, telling them how to get the right people to come in and look because some of them aren't trained
Mm-hmm.
well, and what kind of tests you want to run on your home. And then, and I work with people on that. I talk about it in the webinar, but, and then you want to address your body, like what's going on with your body. So I have a mold questionnaire that was developed by a very well-known doctor that I sat in her program as in a mentorship program with her too to better understand mold.
Mm-hmm.
So when I sat in that, this questionnaire just it worked for all of our patients, and so oftentimes I'll have people fill it out so they can see what's really going on. And it's a pretty sure thing, but it's also a good idea if you can afford to do some testing,
Mm-hmm.
some mycotoxin and mold testing to see how it's showing up in your body. You can
Mm.
have two people living in a moldy space. One person can have zero symptoms because they don't have the genetics to really get that sick. Now, they'll still have some slight symptoms, but they won't be as sick and they won't get it saying, well, I'm fine, there's nothing going on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's because your wife, first of all, is a woman and we have more fat by nature and so it loves to hide in fat, and women also show more symptoms, but it's also because she might have a genetic predisposition not be able to detox well.
Mm.
And so some people, even when they move out of the space, don't get better. Some people get better when they do. So addressing the body first to say what's going on, what kind of molds are going on. And then a lot of times it's working on the nervous system because the nervous system is with people in a moldy environment. I remember this with myself. I like couldn't catch my breath. Like I was meditating around the clock and it didn't seem to matter. And it was like, why am I so stressed out? Why am I so like taking stress pills? Like nothing was really helping. And that was where my client came in. She's like, everyone, even the doctors are telling me this, but nobody's helping me. They just keep, and that's making her even more stressed. So we
Mm-hmm.
address the nervous system and we start re-regulating the vagus nerve, which goes from the brain to the gut. And we
Mm-hmm.
start adjusting that if that's something they want to work on. It's always a choice. People, I don't tell them what to do.
Yeah.
And then we start addressing, the environment, the nervous system, and then start addressing what's going on in their body, of
Mm.
what kinds of other things they need to do. And then if they needed, a doctor to close that gap, some people get better just after doing all these things, lifestyle habits, all of that, addressing their
Mm-hmm.
sleep, they get better. Some people need to bring in a doctor, and I have people I work with that close the gap and we work together. It
Mm-hmm.
just depends on where they are.
Okay. So if one was to come to you today, um, would you would you tell them, okay, you need to go and have this blood work done, and then we will bring the results back to you?
So with mold and mycotoxins, a regular blood test, they don't, traditional doctors don't believe in it as that people get sick from it. So that test is out of pocket, unfortunately. But the mold questionnaire is something I can go over with people, and that will give them a pretty good idea.
Okay.
Um, Most people that have tested later with doctors that went through that, it was always the same. Um, but yeah, so they would then get results back, and then we can kind of talk about some things they can do, and then just give them that ongoing support to just helping because as I said, the client, that particular client that came to me, it didn't matter. You could tell her to do everything. She wasn't able to do it because she was so stressed out. And then she was staying up later to kind of numb that. So we got her back to just better habits. And within a week, she was like, oh my God, I feel so good. Different
Mm-hmm.
eating, like eating to help with mold. I help people get, and again, I tell them like, where would you like to start?
Mm-hmm.
What's important to you? And
Mm-hmm.
we can still get to the same goal with starting with what's important to them first.
Mm-hmm.
And then, she was wanting to work on the eating. And she was one that ate a clean diet and was exercising, was like, why do I feel so bad? So that was a way we addressed it with her first.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm excited. So the listeners, we're gonna have a link in the description for them to go and go to your website. I know you have gave us a link to some freebies, which is a link to the website, I believe, because when I
Yeah.
went there. And so guys, make sure that you go and follow the links. There are many of you that are out there who are like me, who have dealt with symptoms for a long time and nobody can give you the answer. I believe that today we have someone that is an expert in our hormones and especially with mold. A lot of times we don't know we're living in a house that has mold. I believe I lived when my kids were younger, we lived in a house that was moldy. And so once we moved, we knew that out with that, well, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that the house was full of mold because even behaviors and some things had changed. So where some of you are in need more of help outside of your regular doctor. So Coletta, we thank you for giving us such a well of information that is going to help us. Don't forget your vision board is January the
8th and 11th.
8th and 11th. Okay. I thought 11th. Okay, so 8th and 11th, and we're going to go ahead and try to sign up and join you for that. Is it something that you would like to leave the listeners with before we end?
Well, but one thing I do want to mention too, I'm doing a mold webinar on mold, the habits to help heal from mold with microbalance. That's going to be on the 15th. So that'll be on the website too. Just leaving people with just trust yourself. Trust yourself, treat yourself like your own best friend, and trust yourself to realize that I don't have to feel this way. This isn't these normal things that I've accepted, that this is just the way I have to feel, doesn't have to be normal. And you
Mm,
have a choice, and that choice is to change the way you're looking at it so that you start feeling as amazing as you want to feel.
yeah, yeah. That's good because sometimes we have been so accustomed to being sick that we forgot what feeling good feels like.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good. Well, thank you again for joining
Thank
us.
you.
Thank you. So don't forget, everybody, look at the links in the bio, and you will find the links to get to Coletta's website and to get the free resources and to get the links to be able to sign up for the vision board and to be able to access her for if you are going or if you're wanting to sign up for coaching. And you have webinars that are on there as well, correct?
Yeah, I have some webinars that I've done that I have a lot of free resources, my favorite things, and then I'll have the upcoming webinars and workshops on there. Lots of content on there. Yeah.
Good, 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 good. All right. So, until next time, we thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Haven for Soul Care. We hope today's conversation has provided you with the encouragement and tools to take care of yourself and embrace the journey ahead. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, rating, and sharing it with others who may benefit. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. Take a moment today to nurture your soul. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other.